Nature's economy, the currency is not money, it is life. Economic reforms based on the idea of limitless growth in a limited world can only be maintained by the powerful grabbing of the resources of the vulnerable. We are neither going to have a future where women lead the way to make peace with the earth, or we are not going to have a future at all. The future will not be like the past. There is, of course, the ecological issue of slowing down to lighten our footprint, but there are other futures unfolding. We have a future if we can reimagine and reclaim our life and freedom from the money machine. Dear participants, these are the words of Dr. Vandana Shiva, a Gandhian, an Indian scholar, philosopher, ecofeminist, food sovereignty advocate, and author of more than 20 books, and above all, a great human being. I heartily welcome you, ma'am, on our CGBM to Simple Talks 11.
Thank you.
On biodiversity, agriculture, and communities. And I also welcome all the people participating in the webinar from diverse backgrounds from different parts of India and abroad. We have gathered in large numbers to hear Madam Vandana Shiva. On the talk, I also welcome Dr. Akbar Ali, Assistant Professor, Department of Botany, Dayalbagh Educational Institute, Deemed University, Dayalbagh, Agra. I would just try to give a very small brief about Vandana ma'am, though it's very difficult to introduce her in such a small span of time. Dr. Vandana Shiva is from Dehradun, where her early education took place. Ma'am did her BSc with physics from Punjab University, Chandigarh in 1972. After a brief stint at the Bhabha Atomic Research Center, she moved to Canada in 1977 to pursue a master's in the philosophy of science at the University of Guelph. In 1978, she completed her PhD in philosophy at the University of Western Ontario, focusing on philosophy of physics. She later went on to pursue interdisciplinary research in science, technology, and environmental policy at the Indian Institute of Science and the Indian Institute of Management in Bangalore. Dr. Vandana Shiva has written and spoken extensively about advances in the field of agriculture and food. Intellectual property rights, biodiversity, biotechnology, bioethics, and genetic engineering are among the fields where ma'am has fought through activist campaigns. She has assisted grassroots organizations of the Green Movement in Africa, Asia, Latin America, Ireland, Switzerland, and Austria with opposition to advances in agricultural development via genetic engineering. Ma'am has also received several awards and honors. To name some of the important awards, the Right Livelihood Award in 1993, which is an award to honor and support those of offering practical and exemplary answers to the most urgent challenges facing us today, considered an alternative Nobel Prize in the field of environment. Ma'am also got a Sydney Peace Prize in 2010, which is given to honor people who promote peace with justice and a practice of non-violence. Ma'am received the Fukuoka Asian Culture Prize in 2012 to honor the outstanding work of individuals or organizations in preserving and creating Asian culture. In Mirodi Award in 2016, it was given to ma'am which is given to honor individuals who have made outstanding contributions to the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity at global, regional, or local levels. And these are just some of the laurels that ma'am has, part of her journey, and we will be taking you through her ma'am's journey, and I will be happy, ma'am, to share with her journey with all the viewers and us today, on 7th August.
Thank you.
Okay. Ma'am, just to begin with, you had a very strong physics background till even your PhD and doctorate. How and when did you feel the calling from Mother Nature?
I think I never abandoned Mother Nature. I was very fortunate to have grown up in the mountains of the Himalaya. And in fact, when I saw a forest where I'd gone to trek before leaving for my PhD to Canada, when I saw this forest disappear and the stream become a trickle, it was like part of me had got amputated. And then in that process, I found out about Chipko. So I was doing my PhD on the foundations of quantum theory on the one hand, but I took a pledge every vacation, I'll come back to India and work with Chipko as a volunteer. And I started to do that right away. Even in the years when I was in Bangalore, from 79 to 82, I used to come back. In 81, we got a logging ban. But while I was in Bangalore, I remember Dr. Ramaswamy was a very generous director, and we suggested students have social involvement. And the group that used to come to volunteer for Chipko, I used to accompany them. So I've never really had a separation. It's just that when in 1982, I was asked by the Ministry of Environment to do the study on mining in Doon Valley. Our study led to a closure of the mines because of a Supreme Court order. It became the basis of the Supreme Court. And the court gave a very important ruling. It said that if commerce interferes with life and undermines life support systems, which is what the environment provides us, then commerce must stop, because Article 21 of the Constitution requires the state to guarantee the right to life. And we had shown how mining was making water disappear, creating landslides, and giving a little bit of raw material to the cement industry, to the steel industry, sugar industry. But nature's economy of providing water was much bigger, and that led to the closure of the mines. That's when I decided if I give my full life to service to the earth, service to community, I can do so much more. And interestingly, I've got locked down. When I came back, you know, I was doubting, how do I manage? You know, you always worried about funding. And my mother, who was alive then, she said, don't worry, don't be in a dilemma. Do what your heart tells you to do. And if you need a place, take the cowshed. So where I'm sitting and where I started the research foundation is originally my mother's cowshed. And I learned then to do with very little, to build institutions with next to nothing.
Ma'am, you are mute. You should unmute.
Neelam ma'am, kindly unmute yourself.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, ma'am. In 1982, you founded the Research Foundation for Science, Technology, and Ecology. Could you please tell us about the organization's goals and activities?
Well, as I mentioned, I'd worked with Chipko for a whole decade as a volunteer. I'd done the big Eucliptus study while we were still in Bangalore. It was called the Ecological Audit of Eucliptus Cultivation, because I suddenly saw land around Bangalore going to eucalyptus, and I wanted to solve the mystery of why are farmers going crazy? Why aren't they growing ragi? Why are they growing eucalyptus? And that's the first time I came across the World Bank. Having done physics, I didn't know something like a World Bank existed. So I always joke and say I found the World Bank hiding behind a eucalyptus tree. Like I see the big new tech empire hiding behind a little virus. We can talk about that separately. And originally the big long title was Research Foundation for Science, Technology, and Natural Resource Policy. But it didn't fit into the registration form, and I was asked to shorten it. So instead of natural resource policy, it became ecology. And I'm glad, because ecology is actually deeper, wider, and its basic philosophy is people know, people aren't stupid. The people who get hurt by ecological damage are the best experts on the hurt. And they're the first people you should talk to. So I've learned how to talk to women. For mining, I first went to them, and the DOR said the look of the Mussoorie Hills, because Indira Gandhi had said the queen of the hills is being stripped naked. And the Ministry of Environment immediately got into action, and they talked about the look. And I went to the women, I said, what's it about the mining? They said, water. So I said, no, it's not about the look, because they literally, the miners painted the limestone quarries green when the parliamentary committee came to say, see, it's green. So I talked to the women, found out about water, then did the hydrological map, worked it all out. So I have since then done participatory action research. And this helps in 3 ways. First, it includes the people who really know. Second, that participation allows them to start becoming active in shaping their future, and they become engaged in creating the alternatives and making policy and economy and industry accountable. And this is what the Research Foundation has done. Along the way, the seed came. So, of course, Navdanya grew out of it, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so this organization later led to the creation of Navdanya in 1991 as a national movement. Now, what does actually Navdanya mean? Please tell us a little about the organization's focus area and its achievements.
Just one little step back, Neelam. While, the Research Foundation was asked by the United Nations University to do a major study on conflicts over resources. And just by chance that the book supporting my iPad is the book that came out of it, Ecology and the Politics of Survival. It came out of the United Nations University research that was done that time, 82 to 87. This is also the time, as part of this study, I did the study on the Green Revolution, the violence of the Green Revolution. So how did Navdanya come to be, and what does it mean? I had done my MSc honors. Actually, Punjab had an MSc integrated honors course in physics, which is why I chose to go there rather than do a BSc. And I did it in particle physics. And that's what got me involved in the whole issue of quantum theory. The Punjab that I knew was a peaceful Punjab. By 84, it was erupting in violence. That's when I was doing this work for the United Nations University. And I said, there's something going on here I need to study. And I did that study on the Green Revolution. But part of my way of thinking and working is, if I know something is wrong, I won't just study it. I will try and create a better alternative. And so for me, all research has to lead to action. Research that is purely academic is quite meaningless, actually. Yeah, you have a tenured position. I could have been a president, vice chancellor of universities, etc. But that's all I'd have done. Yeah. When what you know leads you to follow it with action, you actually create change in the world. And so I took a pledge, I'm going to promote nonviolent agriculture. I had to teach myself everything from scratch. But that book started to throw me into meetings on agriculture. In some places, I was disinvited, something I've got used to since 84, because, the lobby that promoted chemical farming is a very strong lobby. We've just witnessed the Beirut blast. What is the blast? Ammonium nitrate. Same thing makes explosives. Same thing makes nitrogen fertilizers. That is why you have so many nitrogen fertilizer bombs. Whether it was Oklahoma or Oslo or throughout Afghanistan or the High Court of Delhi, the process of making this ammonium nitrate is the same process. Its users can become directly a bomb or indirectly a bomb. And when I found out while doing my study that this tiny group of people who were really the IG Farben of Hitler's Germany, who created the Xylon B to kill people in concentration camps, Boyer-Essev, which then took the Haber process and made it the Haber-Bosch process for making ammonium nitrate. This was IG Farben. They were tried in Nuremberg for crimes against humanity. And for me, it is sad that the crimes against humanity then continued outside concentration camps, turning Bhopal into a concentration camp, of course, but turning agriculture into a war. That's why I talk so much about making peace with the earth. So they tried to disinvite me, but there was a meeting with the United Nations where it was a small meeting outside Geneva and in Geneva at the UN headquarters about the future of biotechnology. Now, these were tools. In 1987, there was no GMO in the world. But I had done the Green Revolution study, so I was stretching my mind to say, what would the seeds now genetically engineered mean? Of course, they'll mean monocultures, which the Green Revolution had already meant. It would mean more toxics. It would mean less water, more desertification, and a new risk, which we don't know. So I got involved in thinking about the risks, and I was appointed by the United Nations on the group that framed the Biosafety Protocol, a protocol to the Convention on Biological Diversity. It's called the Cartagena Protocol. So this 87 meeting, these companies are there, the old poison cartel, I call them. And now they're saying, we're not making enough money. Got to own the seed. And genetic engineering, which was developed by public sector scientists, can be a tool where we can claim to own life through patenting. And we have to make this a law for the world because it's not good enough. We have patents in Europe and patents in America because the farmers are too few. So we have to have an international law. And they talked about GATT and the Intellectual Property Rights Agreement. So my trajectory of life in globalization was triggered by that 87 meeting. My trajectory of life of saving seed was triggered by that same meeting. And on the flight back, I decided this is what I'll do, save seeds. And I took inspiration from Gandhi's Satyagraha. I said, we will do a Satyagraha. We will not accept patents, you see. But I also took inspiration from his spinning wheel. I said, the seed will be the spinning wheel for the freedom of the seed and the freedom of the farmers. Where did the name come from? I used to just call it the Beej Bachao Andolan. But, you know, Navdanya got registered actually in Bangalore. And our first farm was created outside near Talli. And I was doing a seed collection in the area beyond Talli, where a tribal farmer was growing 9 crops. Now, here I'd done a study on the monocultures of 1 rice throughout Punjab, 1 wheat throughout Punjab. And I used to see our Baranaja and Satnaja in the mountains. But I saw this field and I said, why are you growing 9 crops? And he gave me this most amazing discourse on Navdanya. That the 9 planets, the 9 crops in the field, and our body's balance, he said to me, is one continuity of harmony. And when I grow 9 crops, I'm maintaining that balance. So of course we named it Navdanya. But the fascinating thing is, now increasingly I come to know that the Madurai Meenakshi temple has 9 seeds, which are renewed at the ceremonies where they renew, the cycle of renewal every temple has. And then, of course, we came across the beautiful mandalas that are made at birth. And there is outside Bangalore, in fact, near Baswantgudi, where I used to live, Banashankari. I think there's a temple with 9, and there's a temple opposite the station with 9 trees. So the 9 is so sacred, and it was a tribal farmer on the border of Karnataka and Tamil Nadu who gave me this learning. And that's why for so many of our friends who think that any deep cosmic knowledge of this country has come from the top is mistaken. It's come from the bottom. You know, people know even Ayurveda is really folk medicine distilled later into the texts. But, you know, our divinities were first goddesses, and then came the patriarchs here. So we have such a long ancient history of learning from diversity, living with diversity. And for me, Navdanya is both the 9 seeds of diversity, but also the new gift, Naya Daan. And the Navdanya was, I'm not going to accept seed as the invention of Monsanto. I will not accept the privatization of seed. Seed will be a commons. And so we have created 150 community seed banks, including, because I saved anything. I wasn't looking at what is commercially valuable. My thesis was, nature's not stupid, people are not stupid. So if they evolve this seed, you must save it. And some of the seeds we saved. People used to say low yielding. Well, those were the miracle seeds with salt tolerance that saved farmers after the Orissa super cyclone 1999. And then 2014, I think it was, or was it 2004? Can't even remember. When the tsunami hit the Bay of Bengal, we were able to do, the government declared a holiday, said no farming for 5 years because there's too much salt. And we said, no, there's salt tolerant seeds. And we carried 2 truckloads and farming came back to the tsunami hit area. So these seed banks are really living seed banks that are distributing seeds of different kinds. Today I got a letter of seeds of wheat that don't cause gluten allergy. Well, we've saved those seeds, and Monsanto tried to patent our wheat to have the market of gluten allergy because every third European and American has gluten allergy now. And we fought that case too. So.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think, it's really interesting. In Karnataka, we have something called Navagraha, and we have these 9 trees in most of the temples. So
exactly, that's where all of it is connected, yeah.
Yes, yeah, okay. In 2004, I think you've already spoken a little bit about it. You established the Bija Vidyapeeth, an international college for sustainable living in Doon Valley. So what is the curriculum like, and what are the courses offered at the college? And what does the term actually seed freedom means?
Yeah. Okay, let me begin with the last bit of your question. So seed freedom means what it says, the freedom of the seed. But because all food begins with seed, the freedom of the farmer to save seed, exchange seed, evolve seed. For the seed, what does this freedom mean? The ability to evolve, because seeds evolve. I collected ragi seeds from an old woman outside Bangalore, and she said, I've had this for 40 years in my bin, underground, and I don't know if it'll germinate. And it germinated beautifully. 40 years, it was sitting quiet. Yeah. That is the freedom of the seed. Bija is what we talk about. Bija means ja is life. That from in which life arises on its own forever and ever and ever. It doesn't need an external input. It's not a machine. It's self-organized evolution in continuity. So, and in potential, that my PhD in quantum theory taught me how everything is potential. The idea that the world is made of things is a Cartesian idea of a short 400 years of colonialism. It's time to shed it. Life is energy and potential, and its expression is concrete things, your body, the stone on your wall. But it's basically the vibration, the spandana. That potential is what creates the world and is the creative force of the world. For the farmers, if our farmers were so brilliant that they could take one wild plant called Oryza sativa and turn it into 200,000 varieties of rice, that freedom to continue to be breeders is their right. And I was very fortunate to be invited by the agriculture minister of that time to write the law on plant varieties. Sadly, because of the way systems work, the big corporations get a few corrupt officials in ministries and start feeding the ministers, oh, it has to be this way. Fortunately, in this case, 87 onwards, I'd studied international law on intellectual property. And I said, no, we've managed in WTO, because I worked with our ambassador, S.P. Shukla, brilliant man, to say, let's put a sui generis option in the TRIPS agreement. And we said, no, we don't have to have breeders' right. We can make our own law. So instead of just writing a breeders' rights for industry, we wrote a law, Plant Variety Protection and Farmers' Rights Act. Article 39 of this act is the seed freedom of farmers. And I want to give you a tiny detail how important these laws become, which is why it's so important to not allow the ordinances on dismantling Essential Commodities Act to go through. These are laws that regulated Monsanto on its seed. I, in fact, flew to Bangalore to intervene in a case where Monsanto was trying to knock down the government order on seed price control. And it was the Essential Commodities Act that allowed the seed price control and making Monsanto accountable. But in the case of seed, Pepsi had sued 4 farmers 300-400 crores for saving potato seed. And when I saw this in the news, I immediately sent a book we've done. It's called Origins. Let me just show it to you so you can order it. This is my 33 years of consolidation of work. Yeah, it's called The Corporate War on Nature and Culture, and it's published by Natraj Publishers. And in this book, we've got all of the details. But when I saw the Pepsi suit, I said, no, Article 39 of our Farmers' Rights Act gives farmers the absolute right to save, exchange, breed, sell seed. Send this, the court ordered a dismissal, and Pepsi then had to withdraw its case. What is Beach Vidyapith? Basically, learning from the seed. But you know, the word Beach Vidyapith is too heavy, because I started to get international people, young people from all over the world who wanted to learn how to live at peace with nature, who wanted to learn how to do good ecological agriculture, wanted to learn about seed saving. Many wanted to learn how to live simply. And so I said, Beach Vidyapith's a bit heavy for them. They can't pronounce it. So we have a second name for it called the Earth University. So when you ask me what's the curriculum, one is you can just be at the farm. And the way I've learned from nature, the way I've learned from farmers, the way I've learned from biodiversity is the way people learn, by doing farming. There is no learning better than doing. And we also have courses. So for example, if the lockdown wasn't there, we'd have a 1-month physical course on everything about seed and food and health. But this year we'll do it for a week on Zoom from the 5th of October to the 11th of October. If you go to Navdanya, Earth University, Navdanya Beach Vidyapith, you will find the details of the courses. Okay. And we do one on from the beginning, partly because how did the Beach Vidyapith start? Satish Kumar, who used to be a Jain monk, who then became a Gandhian, and then he went on this long march to support Bertrand Russell, a peace march. He then settled in England and eventually started the Schumacher College, where he asked me to start teaching. So I used to go once a year to the Schumacher College, the first green college of the world. And it's also got roots connected to India, because it was Tagore's secretary, Elmhurst, who Tagore said, now you worked with me in Shanti Niketan, you helped me create Sri Niketan, now you go to the West and create a Shanti Niketan of the West. And this Elmhurst saying, but where do I go? He says, you will go to Totnes. And he says, and what do I do? You will find a beautiful spot where nature can be your teacher and start an institute. And Elmhurst had got married to a very wealthy woman. They were able to buy Richard II's castle. And that is where and it was where the Dartington Trust was started, and Schumacher College was started there. And Satish said, you've got to have a Schumacher in India. And I said, I got enough to do. Please, Satish, don't do this to me. And Satish said, no, it's needed. And the word Beach Vidyapith came out of that conversation. The first course we offered jointly was Gandhi and Globalization. Globalization is a violent process. Gandhi is about ahimsa. So how can you be non-violent in a violent economy? That's the challenge. We always do that. We do courses on Soil Not All, my book on climate change. We do courses according to the needs that people express. And I hope, Neelam, in the future, we'll be able to explore ways in which your organization that works in sustainable building and bamboos, we can somehow build it in. It's something we haven't offered yet, but jointly we could see if that's something.
Yeah, ma'am, I'm so honored. I cannot tell you to hear that from you.
We've got to join hands. We've got to join hands, you know. What are the two things I've learned from nature? That when a bee comes to a flower, it doesn't destroy the flower. Colonizers do, exploiters do. They destroy what they take from. But a bee leaves the flower pollinated and the bee gets honey. And that's the cross-pollination we have to spread.
Yeah, actually, I have been following you for more than 10 years. And I cannot tell you how happy I am today. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. So you have worked, ma'am, extensively on intellectual property rights and biodiversity and challenged the biopiracy of neem, basmati rice, and wheat, among other living resources. Could you please share your thoughts on it? Do you think there's a relation between GM seeds and farmer suicides that are happening across the country here?
So the first is, I wrote the book on biopiracy before biopiracy started, because I said, if you allow patents on anything, patents on plants you haven't invented, patents on knowledge that you just told, you will contribute to biopiracy. And the book Biopiracy is also available in its Indian edition. The neem was the first case. I had started a campaign on neem when the Bhopal disaster happened. I took plants to Bhopal and said, no more Bhopals, let's plant a neem. 10 years later, I find it's patented. I asked friends to dig up the patent. I did 100,000 people's signature, took that to the European Patent Office, and we filed a case. I fought that case for 11 years. And eventually we won. Again, the US government and W.R. Grace, a very big, powerful company, which actually had established a monopoly on collecting neem seeds and had set up a plant in Tumkur, something you won't remember. But the basmati we fought, we won that. The wheat one, it was interesting. Monsanto ran away. I went to the patent office. The European Patent Office chief came out to greet me in the snow. So good to see you back. I said, you should be ashamed to see me back. Because why is a patent office giving biopiracy patents? I thought after neem, you'd never do it again. And if I'm back, it means you're carrying on piracy and theft. I just want to show you in this Origins book is a list of some of the other patents. We have traced 9,000 biopiracy patents on our medicinal plants. You see, India is so rich in biodiversity and biodiversity knowledge, whether it's food or medicine. And it's up for grabs. And the same companies that push the toxics are also patenting our biodiversity. So the biopiracy was very important. The idea of patent is you invent. You don't invent a plant. Grace did not invent the use of neem for pesticide. And Monsanto does not invent a seed. All it does, and even actually, the history of this is so deep because Monsanto didn't even do the first genetic engineering. Other companies called Agro-Ecologist, they're the first ones who got patents. And then Monsanto sues and sues and sues till you get fed up and you sell yourself to them. And that's how they've accumulated the patents and become the big monopoly on seed. On the suicide issue, I've done these studies very deeply, and both at the level of field, because we work in with Harba, but also at the level of secondary research. The data is about 400,000 farmers have committed suicide in India since 95. Most of the suicides began in the cotton belt. They've of course spread to other areas. Potato farmers are committing suicide. Wherever there's costly seed, a monopoly buyer, farmers are in debt. Why do farmers in BT cotton areas commit suicide? First, Monsanto monopolized cotton. And again, I won't give you details. It's all in this book. We've had case after case. We were last in the Supreme Court, where having realized that Monsanto cannot claim to have a patent because our patent law says plants, animals, and seeds are not patentable, they said, oh, seed is an empty container into which we put a chemical. And the seed becomes like a Superman. They were acting like that inside the courts. Fortunately, they didn't get the decision they had wanted. They had wanted to strike down. They basically had wanted it declared that seed is an empty container. Yeah. So seed is still seed in Indian law, and patenting seed is still illegal. Piracy is illegal. Intellectual property rights is a wrong term. We used to have industrial property rights. You produce a new machine, you get a patent. You had design. You all are, you're in architecture. You have a design. You can register a design. You're a writer, you're a songwriter, you can have a copyright. They were all different categories of creativity with a very different law. The word intellectual property was created for WTO. And they mixed up Michael Jackson's records, owning the seed, and everything became one khichdi. And they started to talk about property and products of the mind. But I always say, A, company is a fiction. Corporations don't exist. They're not people like you and me. You can't pinch them and you can't hug them. And a fiction can't have a mind. So how are you giving property to products of the mind of a fiction? It is so wrong in law. And I really hope that around the world, this movement of no patents on life, no patents on seed will grow. We have created a global seed freedom movement, and we've created a global movement against biopiracy. And I think with decolonization, and part of what happened in the last few months is the movements against colonialism and racism. And hopefully through those cracks, the new colonialisms will be addressed and people will prevent it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am, on that. Actually, yeah. So there's an intellectual property right. That means it should be more to the machines and it should not be to the living systems. In our country, we can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now coming to your eco-feminist movement, you played a major role in the global eco-feminist movement. What does it actually mean, and what is its relevance in countries like India?
So, I'm not an ISMA believer of any kind, and, I love freedom too much. And the word ecofeminism was created by a French feminist. I didn't even know it existed when I wrote my book, Staying Alive. Having got involved in Chipko and having seen it was the women who were out there defending the forest. And when the dam fights happened, it's the women who were defending the river. When Bhopal disaster happened, it's women who were defending the rights of people of that genocide. The book Staying Alive was asking the question, why are women out front defending nature? And that's when I did a lot of work on history of science, philosophy of science, and read Bacon. Unbelievable. I'm so glad I never did social science, because as a physicist, you learn your equations and then you think yourself. So I read these big white men when I was an old brown woman and could understand the nonsense they were speaking. Mm. So Bacon was basically saying, let me see if I can find what Bacon said very quickly for you. He's called the father of modern science, father. Yeah. Interesting thing is, he thought he was such a smart scientist. He tried to stuff a chicken with ice to find out how much it could tolerate ice. The chicken survived. Bacon got pneumonia and died. But that's the level of brilliance in science that became the father of modern science. He wrote a book called The Masculine Birth of Time. And his science should be, as it were, torture nature's secret, subjugate her, enslave her. That thinking is the thinking of capitalist patriarchy, of domination over nature as a woman, but in the process also declaring women as a second sex, declaring indigenous people, local cultures as primitive, barbarian, needing to be civilized with violence. All this got tied up together. And I was later asked to do a book on ecofeminism with Maria Mies. And if I had to define it today, I would say it is merely removing the violence and blinkers of colonialism, capitalist patriarchy, and everything that declares nature is dead. Women are stupid, and third world cultures are primitive.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. You have published several books and already shown us some of them, papers and reports. Staying Alive, Making Peace with the Earth, Violence of the Green Revolution, and so on. So though this, I think you've already addressed the question a little, is there a central theme threading all these books together?
Well, I would say I have my conscience as my anchor and my mind of integrity, which thinks. So quite clearly, your anchor doesn't go this way and that, you know. Fashions in Paris might change every season, but deep thinking is about deep issues. So I would say the continuity throughout, and I've always addressed new challenges as they come. I wouldn't have got into agriculture if Punjab, the place where I studied, had interrupted in violence. I knew it peaceful. I saw it in violence. I wouldn't have worked in seed if I hadn't been at that meeting of 87. I wouldn't today be working on Bill Gates. My new book is called Oneness versus 1%, and it's available from Women Unlimited. If I hadn't watched Bill Gates trot around the stage of the Paris Climate Summit, treating heads of state as his little peons and errand boys, I said, since when did billionaires become the top bosses of the world? And my book, Oneness versus 1%, tries to answer that. So the thread really is, nature is alive, we are creative, and our freedom and nature's freedom is one freedom. And of course, even though I'd studied physics, a lot of my ecology I have learned from ordinary people in India, peasant women, tribals, like I said, Navdanya, who have practiced indigenous thinking. Yeah, they didn't go to school. So they are pure. And I have learned a lot from our culture. I think there's a lot less wrong with our culture. But these are layers that have been added over time. Caste as a frozen issue of birth is not what it originally was. It was like the guilds of Europe. You could choose to be a carpenter or a goldsmith. And turning it into an hierarchy, there's a lovely book by Vivekananda on socialism. Most people won't connect Swami Vivekananda with socialism, but he has said, the British Empire created the rule of traders and rule of commerce, and this has spread violence everywhere. It's when the workers, they weren't called Dalits then, they were called Shudra. When the Shudra, who is the worker, will be the ruler, there will be true justice and true spirituality in society. So there's a lot to discover, and I'm very humbled. But I am also very cautious of where parts of our culture gets, like the colonialism extract an element. They extract azadirachtin from the neem. They extract a gene. The gates are extracting our brain functions and body functions and doing data mining. Extractivism is violence. Holism allows you to be non-violent. And any extraction, including cultural cannibalism, is violent. So we have to know what is it in our culture that is the roots of the ecological civilization. We must protect it with love and celebrate it. And wherever there's a distortion taking place, we must have the honesty to say, this is not us. This is a genetically engineered us.
Yeah, I think we also never had this thing of having certificates and the way of education in India was through wisdom and not knowledge.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, so
Yeah.
it's only knowledge when practiced, and
Yeah.
over generations it becomes wisdom. And I think that's what
I would suggest to your listeners to visit the Navdanya website for my blogs.
Yeah.
Because on World Simplicity Day, we launched a new campaign called Swast, which also means Swast because we are in the middle of a pandemic. But it also means grounded in yourself, self-confidence. We are a Swaraj country.
Yeah.
We
Yes.
grow from within. And one of my big issues has been this issue of certification, not just knowledge, but, you know, I used to love my murkus in the South. The chips, they've all gone. Industrial food is taken over. I was reading a study today how we are very small compared to other countries on ultra-processed food. And the new laws, the ordinances on food, would make us a junk food country and very, very sick. Our food is so good. I still remember my ragi dosa daily. I'd go out and have it. You know, what I remember most about my Bangalore days is one, the coconut tree through my office room in IIM Bangalore, and two, the dosas. We cannot lose that purity. We cannot lose the integrity of our food. It is the best in the world. And we must do a satyagraha against the junk that is being imposed on us.
Yeah, I think in the pandemic, everyone is realizing that, you know, I think slowly people are, I think this is the right time for that. Okay, ma'am, there's one you are in many national and international government committees in extremely important positions. International forums on globalization, the Women's Environment and Development Organization, the Third World Network, World Future Council, and Government of India committees on organic farming, among several others. Now, generally, activism is not very favorably seen by the authorities, especially since politics, bureaucracy, and corporates, they work in tandem for most of the policy developments. Now, what is your experience?
Well, you know, India has gone through many changes, and between the time, you know, before 95, there were no corporations in India lobbying our government. And therefore, our government was sovereign and ministers were sovereign. And that's the time we made a lot of laws. That's the time I was invited. I don't get invited as an activist. I get invited because in the process of my activism, I do a lot of research. You know, if it's about neem, I'll write 5 books. You know, if it's about Green Revolution, I'll write the books. And it's really the research that makes them realize that there are things they don't know. We don't know where the world is going. I say we are living in uncertainty, another principle I learned from quantum theory. But uncertainty means an even higher obligation to throw yourself on the side of truth and life and freedom, rather than be a passive bystander, which means you are then creating the certainty of destruction and extinction.
Yeah, okay. One more, I have heard of many, soil not oil, and the other campaigns. I don't know whether it's called campaigns or kind of phrases that you have put. The one that I really liked was on slow food against fast food. And could you just tell us a little more about it?
Yeah. So Soil Not Oil grew out of the fact that I was preparing a brief for the Copenhagen Climate Summit. That was 2009. And I had been doing a lot of work on agriculture. I'd been doing a lot of work on soils. I'd also been doing a lot of work on climate change. And I realized in all the climate negotiations, the theme of food and agriculture was missing. They talk of energy, but they don't talk agriculture. So I took the IPCC data on agriculture. They call it land use change, basically deforesting the Amazon for the GMO soya, which is then dumped on us and subsidized by $190 a ton. I won't go into that story of our Sarson Satyagraha. This entire world that's being created is a world based on narrow extractivism. You reduce climate change to only energy. And then you say, okay, let's find another source of energy. But if 50% of your emissions, as my book Soil Not Oil shows, comes from an industrial globalized system of agriculture, and now with the pandemic, that same system is what is leading to new pandemics, and the UN has said, we are only addressing the symptoms, the health and economic symptoms. The real cause is our destruction of nature, our destruction of forests. So basically, Soil Not Oil was remembering, and it's a very scientifically done document, but the campaigns grew after that. They grew out of that. A lot of people adopted it, started to do conferences. And 2009 to now, we are in 2020, it is now becoming clear that replacing energy sources is not enough. How you grow your food, how you repair the cycles, you know, that Beirut explosion again, yeah? That is the rupture of the nitrogen cycle. And the nitrogen rupture is much worse than the carbon rupture. Nitrous oxide is 300 times more deadly to the damage of the climate. So Soil Not Oil is really saying the abuse of the soil is climate change. Healing the soil is answers to climate change. Slow food, I was part of the vice president of Slow Food, and the whole issue of fast food is, you know, in the West, it was more about taste and the quality of slow food. For me, it is not just about taste, it is about culture, it is about health, as we are increasingly realizing. And we have a book called Annam, which has made this connection between food and health. And most importantly, it's only when you grow real food will you have real health. And I'm coming out with a big report in the middle of September, which will also address the issue of fake food. Because sadly, those who've made money from Silicon Valley, patents on software, now are thinking, oh, let's starve the people and then give them fake food and take all the subsidies like we took for chemical fertilizers. We collected subsidies. Because if they had to sell it to farmers at cost price, no farmer could buy it. The subsidies create the market. They're hoping subsidies will create the market for bad food that will kill people even more. So food is really the crux of the future, yeah? And we have been gifted in India with such an amazing heritage. And you, and those of you who are in South India, have an even higher responsibility because you were not that directly colonized. So good food is still there in Karnataka, in Kerala, in Andhra, in Tamil Nadu. So food freedom and seed freedom are the freedom. Beat Swaraj and Swaraj, I've written many pieces that this is Asli Atmanirbharta. Pepsi and junk food is not Atmanirbhar Bharat.
Yeah. I saw you, ma'am, in the movie of the Planet of the Humans. And because I was following it very closely, and I think in that the director has taken the statements of so many people about the energy thing and the climate change. I'm sure you know more about that. And your statement about the energy crisis, I think, was the most authentic and just on the spot to the problem. I mean, that was something I felt so proud, you know, like a lady and from India. And I think the only one in the whole movie, she made the right statement, I mean, about how we have to solve the issue. That also, ma'am, brings me to the next question, is about this biofuels, which is non-fossil fuel. So people say there's not enough land for, food growing, and that's why we have to do precision farming so that we can have more areas where we can grow biofuels, and so that we don't use fossil fuels. You know, it's like that. What is your idea about that, actually?
So 2 quick things on that. Biofuels don't substitute fossil fuels. You know, if I squeeze diesel out of a soya bean, you know, if you have sesame, squeeze it like that, you're going to get oil out of it. Even groundnut in a pestle, you can get oil out of it. A coconut, those are oil seeds. Soya bean is not an oil seed. To squeeze, even to squeeze edible oil out of it, you have to use solvent extraction. But to squeeze diesel out of it, you use more energy that is fossil fuel based to make the biofuel. Yeah, so it's a net negative energy system, which uses more energy than it produces, just like industrial food is a net negative energy equation, uses 10 units of energy to produce 1 unit of food. And it's not substituting biofuel, but it is diverting food away from people, which is why we are getting more and more hunger, the more and more food is going to animal feed. I've done a study on corn. Monsanto's big thing now, because, you know, BT cotton was there first. They're desperate to have GM corn. We've stopped them so far. So they want the country addicted to hybrid corn, and then they'll bring the GM hybrid. We did a study on corn, again, like eucalyptus. I said, why is it all becoming eucalyptus? Went to Rajasthan, went to other places. Why is it all hybrid corn? And I realized two things. One, the subsidies for corn are very high. But 75% of the corn grown in India today is going for chicken feed and animal feed and factory farms. That is why people who worried about violence against animals should be working. Preventing the animal feed industry to growing factory farming, because the subsidies for that system are much bigger. And the final thing is, of course, when these subsidies make biofuel and animal feed so profitable, then invasion into the soya, into the Amazon and forest becomes necessary. And that's the reason we're seeing such horrible forest destruction. And I've done a lot of analysis on it. In Latin America, it used to be 1% soya bean in the world. They're now becoming 60%. And I work with communities who have birth defects, cancer. It is a tragic situation. It's a very tragic situation. And my basic, you know, I say, my passion is love for life and the earth's life and people's life, and a passion for truth. And my outrage is when there's untruth and violence against life. And so much of my ecological work is to basically bring that love to the protection and say, no, you will not carry on the violence.
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am. I will just, we'll have a very brief, presentation by Dr. Akbar Ali. And I'll briefly introduce him. And I'm actually also from Dayalbagh Institute. I am an alumni. And I did my BSc with physics and maths. And so then I switched to architecture, actually. And I also did my theology. So just to understand that sustainability and spirituality are generally two sides of the same coin. And so just a brief this thing about Dayalbagh, which is actually means the Garden of the Merciful, is in Agra in Western UP. And it is a headquarter of the Dayalbagh sect of the Radhaswami faith, where our actually 8th revered Guru, Sant Sadguru, he lives and presides over the satsang. Now this whole place, Dayalbagh, actually was literally a sand dune. There were sand dunes about 60-70 years ago or more. And this is right now, after so many years, the lands where the colony was established was sand dunes by the side of the river Yamuna. And for more than 60 years, residents of the colony, men and women, young and old, have been working with quiet dedication as a daily practice. They give it like a voluntary, seva, for that. In a vast program for reclamation of land launched in 1943 by our 6th revered Guru, Huzur Mehta Ji Maharaj, and the result is a fertile, lush green, 1,200 acres farm where food grains, oil seeds, fodder, and vegetables are grown. Today also, all of us actually do our voluntary contribution every day in the agricultural activities in the fields on a daily basis. And this has this affiliated educational institutes, and Dayalbagh Educational Institute is one of them, which got the status of the deemed university in 1982. It's actually a more than 100 years old institute. And this mission, the mission objective of DEI, Dayalbagh Educational Institute, is to provide value-based, comprehensive, and interdisciplinary education to evolve a complete person. So in tune with the botany department of the Education Institute engages in a promotion of participatory research methodology in the field of agriculture, where research is with communities and not just for them. This ensures accountability of the research process and outcomes to a wider community. More about that we will hear from Dr. Akbar Ali. A quick brief about Dr. Akbar Ali. He has done his PhD in botany from Aligarh Muslim University and completed his postdoctorate from Department of Botany, Dayalbagh Educational Institute, and which was sponsored by the Science and Engineering Research Board of DST, Department of Science and Technology, New Delhi. And he has done considerable work on cultivation of several medicinal and aromatic plants on scientific lines. And he has published several highly acclaimed research articles and book chapters presented in various national and international forums. He's a life member of several national and international scientific societies. And presently he is working in the area of protected cultivation for enhancing crop yield using photosynthetically efficient wavelengths. He will be speaking on DEI's unique core course on agriculture, operations and rural development, and its initiative on smart agriculture, protected cultivation, institute biodiversity parks, and organic farming. Dr. Akbar Ali, welcome.
Thank you, ma'am.
Start your presentation.
Thank you very much, ma'am, to give me an opportunity to present a workshop on biodiversity, agriculture, and community. I am sharing my presentation. This topic to be covered in my presentation are DI, agriculture, operation and rural development, smart and precision agriculture, protected cultivation for enhanced crop yields, organic farming, conservation and biodiversity park, and labs on land and outreach programs.
Could you be a little louder, Dr. Ali?
Dayalbagh has been in existence now for more than a century. Education and agriculture were initiated almost along with the establishment of Dayalbagh. Agriculture is one of the three key goals DI has identified in its vision plan. DI education policy evolves a complete person, a well-rounded total equality person whose hallmarks are intellectual strength, scientific temper, emotional maturity, truthfulness, high moral characters, simple living, and dedicated to duty and discharge of obligations, interdisciplinary outlooks, good general knowledge, sound aptitude, and understanding of the society. The academic plan promotes the science of agriculture, teaching and research to benefit rural mental. Carry out high quality research in agriculture and sustainable agriculture by developing low cost and innovative solution to local problems that could impact the nation. Similarly, Department of Botany, keeping the lines with the institute vision, will be working towards a smart and precision farming and agriculture, and developing multi-climatic greenhouse for protecting cultivation, ecosystem dynamics, and climate change biodiversity parks. Agriculture operation and RDC is compulsory core course among the 9 core courses of every undergraduate students in all streams and faculty. DI education is based on Sigma 6Q values and attributes. Agriculture techniques suitable for this semi-arid region were adopted, and today all the 3 crops of Rabi, Zaid and Kharif, of pulses, paddy and cereals, fruits and vegetables, despite discouragement from the agriculture scientists that nothing can be grown in this region. So these are the some agriculture activities of the department by botany. And agriculture and dairy. are part of the lifestyle or way of life in Dayalbagh, especially. These activities with the UG students, agriculture operations, BWOC dairy technology students, and BWOC agriculture technology students, and BSc honors agriculture students. So, and some botany department has developed and maintains botanical garden in science faculty, biodiversity park in RA Intermediate College, medicinal and herbal garden dairy campus, fruit orchard at Seminar Hall Complex, a multi-dimensional phytodiversity park with conservatory for local medicinal plant, fruit orchard and plant for essential oil at Bahadurpur, fruit orchard and herbal garden at Himachal Pradesh, and polyhouse at dairy campus for cultivation of some crops. These are some plantation by the students, and these are the some work experience courses, which is first year and second year undergraduate students. Maintenance of botanical garden, dairy products, modern crop production, protein production technology, mushroom and spirulina cultivation, cell and molecular techniques. A greenhouse protected cultivation, greenhouse and smart agriculture. Now we called as a polyhouse, greenhouse cultivation. In a greenhouse is the most practical methods for achieving the objectives of the protected agriculture, where the natural environment is modified by using sound engineering principles to achieve optimum plant growth and yields. We have set up several greenhouse and started cultivation of crop like tomato and cherry tomato, bell pepper and cucumber. So you are here seeing photographs cultivation of cherry tomato and cucumber by the students of BWOC greenhouse technology. And these are some sensors which is set up in greenhouse. The computer sensor were fixed in polyhouse and node differentiate based on the weather, like as a temperature, humidity, and soil moisture content. And these data will collect on a display on a computer, and then be easily controlled in a lab. Under the polyhouse, healthy tomato plant growth through the protected cultivation you are seeing here. And now we are developing in a hydroponics, fogponics and aeroponics and vertical farming also in greenhouse. And greenhouse are suitable for the automation of irrigation, application of other inputs and environmental control by using computers and artificial intelligence techniques. And this is the self-employment for the educated youth. And RA Biodiversity Park, our department has set up a different biodiversity park, different site of DI and Dayalbagh. Near 700 students and faculty members of botany department have contributed their efforts to develop 7 biodiversity parks, where more than 300 plant species totaling more than 10,000 have been established. Agronomic practices of new fruits like apple, olive, dragon fruits, and strawberry, and high value vegetables like broccoli and German turnip. So these are photographs of a RAI Biodiversity Park. We have cultivated bougainvillea garden, succulent gymnosperm garden, temperate fruit gardens, palm plantation, birds and butterfly gardens, multi-grafted and rare plants, and arboretum. And second is a seminar hall complex biodiversity park. In 2016, it's a challenge to botany department because the soil is sandy and the irrigation issues, high temperature and low humidity during summer. Now, almost 9,000 trees planted that naturally sequestered carbon and clean the environment and enrich with the oxygen. Orchard developed will be source of income for students with me. It developed fully by students and faculty members, botany department and other teaching of faculties. And the strawberry plantation by the students of BSc Agriculture. And another biodiversity park is Padhan near Solan, Himachal Pradesh. We are cultivating also adu, fig, kiwi, nectarine, and some tomato cultivation. And so all these are labs on land and outreach programs at different sites, Padhan, HP, Aloe Vera at Harbour Garden, Smart Agriculture at Dairy Campus, RA Biodiversity Park, and Tomato and Chiku, Jatropha Field and Seminar Hall complexes. And these are the research activities in the departments. And this work on a biofertilizer production, Professor Prem, students of Mr. Tegh Bahadur Singh under the supervision of Professor Prem Kumar Dantu, he on organic farming is a system which avoids a largely exclude the use of synthetic inputs such as fertilizers, pesticides, hormones, feed additives, and to maximize extent feasible rely upon crop rotation, crop residue, animal systems or nutrient mobilization, and other plant protection. So FOA suggested that the organic agriculture is a unique production management system which promote and enhance agro-ecosystem health, including biodiversity, biological cycles, and soil biological activities. And this is complied by using on-farm agronomic, biological, and mechanical methods in exclusion of the all synthetic or farm input. So we collect rhizophilic soils from the different places and PGPR isolates and biofertilizer preparation, and it apply in the fields, and we found morphological and yield parameters will be increased. And these are the research on plant tissue culture and different plant, Pipalongum, Dracena, Ricin culture, citrus, Carasso, Rhizosativa, and Dracena, asparagus, and so on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. I think that was a very interesting presentation on community-based agriculture education, which is actually, as you said, is a basic part of the way the Dayalbagh whole education system works. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Vandana ma'am, we'll start with the questions.
Sure. Sure.
And I request the participants that you've already sent some questions to me, during the registration. I will go through them first. And then after that, once you have some more questions, then I will take it as time permits. We have ma'am Dhruvang from Maharashtra. He's asking, in Maharashtra, where we can get indigenous seeds, especially when one is looking at reviving traditional farming practices such as millets, etc. Any good source of seeds that you might know?
Yeah. So a lot of people are looking for seed, but they should give up the supermarket mentality. Go pick up. You have to become part of the movement, a commitment to be part of a community. I said it's about a new gift of the commons. So if you were to write to navdanya@gmail.com and talk about the kind of agriculture you want to do where you are, you must remember seed has to be multiplied with love. Yeah. So you can't just say, I want this much potato seed, or I want this much tomato seed. You got to work with the farmers who will grow it, or you have to work with Navdanya. And I am committed to spreading desi seeds and native seeds, because right now what we are realizing is I save seeds to prevent GMOs and patenting. Today we have to save and grow indigenous seed for our health. And therefore we need new partnerships. And we have to shed the supermarket mentality, and we have to build a community commitment. Seva, you said seva.
Yeah.
Seva is the way to go. We can be the facilitators and mediators. Navdanya members are growing seed, but to grow more so that others can have needs a season of waiting, which means you write to us.
Yeah.
Do write to us, navdanya@gmail.com. You can even write to me personally, but I'll forward it to navdanya@gmail.com, because that's something that that unit looks after. And let's join this together. This is a Beat Swaraj campaign. Yeah? But I do not entertain, I want this much seed tomorrow. I don't entertain that. I don't entertain it.
Yeah. And I think there's a repetition of the question further. But then, Vaidehi Lavan, capitalism how impacting on ecology and adversely affecting on small settlements, self-sustained communities, especially tribal areas. And they, in fact, I think, oh, thanks for arranging this talk. So I think they got enlightened about through that. Or ma'am, would you like to share some?
Yeah, no, all I'd say is I have been trying to find out, when did capitalism get born? What is capitalism? And I can't find its birth. I can find colonialism. I can find militarized commerce, which is what colonialism is. I can see that starting 500 years ago, being facilitated with fossil fuels, the Manchester, Lancashire, but 200 years after colonialism, the empire of cotton grabbed land, made slaves, destroyed our textile economy. Today's World Handloom Day, or National Handloom Day. Sadly, they're trying to dismantle the National Handloom Board, but we are a result of all of this. The name capitalism is naming a phenomena by hiding what it truly is. The phenomena is of extraction, violence, colonization. And $45 trillion was transferred from India to England by collecting taxes and lagan from the peasants. Amir Khan's film is a good popular introduction of what lagan means. The 1942 famine gives you an idea of what lagan means. It wasn't that there was lack of rice. Amartya Sen has done his book on it. There was enough rice, but the farmers couldn't eat their own rice because the British were taking it away. And they made more money in that year of famine. So that is now called capitalism. And I don't use that word easily because it makes it look, it reaffirms the illusion that nature is dead inert matter, that peasants and women are unproductive, and a mysterious creation is done by capital. But capital, like a corporation, is a fiction. It's a construct. Yeah. So you can't have a construct being handed over all the creation of the world and saying, oh, they created. So I would much rather use the word colonialism and much rather use the word decolonization. And that's why I say the currency of life is life. The currency of life is not money. Money is a construct. And, you know, in India, we used to have, when I used to travel as a child, every little town had its own currency, the ancient times, you know, and they were still doing it, dealing with it. In America during the Great Depression, 3,000 currencies were created. Yeah. So what currency you create? In 2016, overnight, digital currency took over. The new patterns are all about cryptocurrency and evaluation. So how value is assigned and how value is created is part of the story. Yeah. And I've lived too long and reflected too long to believe the stories of violence and deceit as the only stories that can govern our lives.
Okay, ma'am. There's another question. How is modern agriculture to be implemented in daily life in today's time?
Well, the term modern itself, you know, if I'm sitting here wearing a sari and if you're sitting there wearing a hand-printed kurta or blouse or whatever you're wearing, it's modern. Modern means that which exists today. Modern is a chronological label, but it has been given an ideological label, and modern is whatever is imposed through colonization. So when you start wearing blue jeans, you're dressed modern. But when you dress in your own clothes, you are not modern. And modern has been made opposite to tradition when continuing traditions are modern.
Yeah. Correct.
And oppressive traditions are modern. And which modern will you choose is the choice of democratic society. So when you ask about agriculture, organic farming today is a very modern activity. It went to the world through Albert Howard, who came to India. And as he wrote, he was an imperial person who was sent to start the Pusa Institute in 1905. He writes a book called An Agricultural Testament. He says, I watched how rich the farming was. I made the peasant my professor. So the world organic farming spread from India. He saw it as modern. He made it modern. Some people think outmoded war industry of Hitler is modern. I think it's crude, primitive, and 100 years old and should never have continued. Yeah. So let's not use let's stop using unreliable terms.
Yeah.
You know, let's use reliable terms. Modern is a nothing word.
Yeah.
Different contemporary options. Choose them according to what's good for the earth, what's good for humanity, what is non-violent, and what is violent. Those are the criteria that you have to use.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We have one from one architect about your thoughts on veganism, vegan diets.
Yeah, it's a bit like when I started to save seeds, I began with the assumption that nature knew why she created species and our ancestors knew why they evolved different varieties. I have the same attitude to our knowledge. I have respect for Ayurveda, and Ayurveda has a lot of use of products that come from cows, right? Veganism is a very new phenomenon, right? Vegetarianism is old. I'm a vegetarian. Just like modern is a meaningless word, plant-based is a meaningless word. Of course, if I eat a carrot, I'm eating a plant. But plant-based doesn't mean eating a carrot. It means taking GMO soya, having it ground up, having a yeast in the lab, making blood, making a fake burger called Impossible Burger, putting 14 patents on that destroys the monarch butterfly, has destroyed the farmers, destroyed the Amazon. Frankly, I will not be a vegan watching that whole chain. So I have a clear criteria about violence and non-violence. Violence and non-violence comes from the way you relate. If you relate with hate and indifference, it doesn't matter what you eat, you're eating violently. And if you relate with love, you know, every tribal I know prays to the deer they shoot. Every indigenous person I knew has the, salmon is their sacred fish. They apologize to it, they pray to it. When we collect medicinal plant, we apologize. When Chipko women were collecting twigs, I'd go with them to the forest. They'd apologize to the forest. Say, I'm having to take this. So the apology is what matters. Non-violence is what matters. I don't think, Cartesianism made too many mistakes of absolutism and stuffness, yeah? They put things into stuff. And now we're thinking, as long as it's a plant, no matter how violent that system is, it's fine. No. Even plant-based systems like GMO soya cultures and lab-made meat can be very violent. So I would say we are too rich a culture. We have too long a history of ahimsa. We have Buddha and Jain and Gandhi to guide us. Let us be a little more discriminating. Vigyan in our language means the ability to discriminate.
Yeah. We have Thomas Dhanasilam asking how government is supporting organic farmers and efficient irrigation systems. How can we attract educated youth to agriculture activities and make this as a respected profession?
Well, on the respected profession, it's really in you. The day you decide that I'm not going to accept the hierarchy, that this is the low level, and sitting in a bank making money for someone is a high level work, it's all a construct again. And in Navdanya, we get so many people from banks and finance and IT come and, they've had a burnout. They made money and they've had a burnout and they want to be organic farmers. They come and train with us.
Yes, correct.
And that's why I hope,
right.
You'll go to the website and look at the course. I think it's extremely important to make this cultural shift to say, farming is the highest activity. That's what we used to say, that Kisan is the highest. Then trade was the lowest, commerce was the lowest. first the Kisan, then the maker, what was called the Shudra. And we flipped it and made the hierarchy the opposite, you know. In terms of agriculture itself, you know, it just so happens to be lying in front of me. This is a book brought out by Westville Publication. This gentleman heard me with the agriculture minister speaking on organic. And he said, why aren't there textbooks on this? Will you write a textbook? So this book called Biodiversity, Agroecology, Regenerative Organic Farming from Westville is my 35 years of research on all of this. All I'll say to you is the idea that irrigation is necessary creates ignorance because the soil is the container of water. And when I used to travel to India, no matter what, 25% land would be irrigated, 75% was still green and rain-fed. Around Karnataka, you are mainly rain-fed agriculture. And then we started to go for external input chemical, which required external input irrigation, 10 times more water, and we stopped farming in ways that conserves water in the soil. 0.5% organic matter in the soil holds 80,000 liters. Now that's the way you conserve water. On the economy, we have a report, it's called Nutrition and Health per Acre. It's available on the Navdanya website because the yield per acre tells you nothing. And I said, I'm not going to measure monoculture commodities. I'm going to measure biodiversity. And I won't measure yield, I'll measure nutrition. We can feed 2 times India's population. And we have a book called Wealth per Acre done. The agriculture minister did the foreword. When he saw the draft, he said, this is the most important. You know, $1.3 trillion of damage to farmers and nature is the cost of chemical farming. $1.3 trillion annually in India alone. And organic farmers who have their own seed and create their own market are earning 10 times more than those chasing money. People chasing commodities, just growing. I have been in Karnataka going outside. Women will be sitting with baskets of tomato. Please take it, please take it. It will cost me more to take it to the town and I don't have the money. 100 times is the cost of production and the value is 50 paise per kilo. It's not worth it. So again, the high value crop is a wrong term. Crops, you know, a millet can be made high value. It is. Right now, millets are more profitable. Yeah. Tomatoes are getting you nothing. And I want us, you know, I started saving millets. We call it the forgotten foods. I feel so happy that in Karnataka, there's so many shops that brought millets back. But let us turn India into a millet country. We'll all be healthier. There'll be more water conserved. 250 millimeters is all that millets take. And most importantly, the most marginal farmers will have something to grow and sell and will not be punished for not having the best land and enough water.
Yeah, great. There's one, we have Mr. Srivastava Reddy. He's talking about if there could be a policy or legislation along with standard guidelines on broader water conservation, soil erosion prevention, and guidelines to all open field cultivation. And similar policy and legislation for afforestation of equal or proportionate area where arable lands are required for any commercial or development activities.
So I talked about this book. This book has all the guidelines. It's got a whole chapter on water. And it's based not just on the best science, it's based on our practices. How do you conserve water? How do you do this? You know, this is organic soils. This is chemical soils. Organic soils hold their aggregates. Chemical soils run away. That's why you have erosion. These are data of Rodale Institute. In a drought, the chemical soil couldn't deal. So this book from Westville Press, Biodiversity, Agroecology, Regenerative Organic Agriculture, has a lot of detail on every dimension. We are an Aranya Sanskriti. Our farms were forests. Every field one, when I did the Eucliptus study, I started to celebrate the Pungamia, even on the Navdanya farm. At the center, I have planted a pongamia, which is what I got introduced to in the Karnataka farming. I don't think militarized. I think the role of the state, role of legislation, is to prevent harm. The role of society is to promote good and have the freedom and not have to be threatened by the harm. And that's why the big debates on the EIA 2020, that is taking away the protection of forests, or the new ordinances on Essential Commodities Act, Marketing Acts, Contract Farming Acts, all this forcing on the farmer is actually not farmer's freedom, and it is corporate freedom. And we've got so used to double speak and spinning of words. I think the biggest challenge of our times is recognizing post-fact and post-truth, recognizing spin and propaganda and distinguishing it from true science. And it takes a lot of knowledge in order to be able to see the difference. And we are in a privileged situation. All of you who are at this talk are in a situation where you can play a role to show future. And again, if you go to the website and see my blogs, I've done a 10-year transition for India called Jaivik Bharat. Jaivik means both organic, but it also means living. I don't think we need to have farmer suicides. We don't need to have children dying of hunger. And we definitely don't need chronic diseases and disease epidemics that are killing people. All three are avoidable deaths. And the answers lie in care for the land so that you can care for society.
Yeah, great. This is one we have Mr. Oren Dayalbagh. I think he's from Portugal. And he's asking about, I think he has seen the Planet of the Humans movie. And he was talking about which is the renewable energy technology really energy efficient, wind or solar. He's asking like that. And he was talking about what is the best technology for housing and infrastructure construction to minimize energy consumption and public spaces. I mean, it's a very long question. So I think.
So on the urban spaces issue, he should turn to you and you can have a dialogue with him.
Yeah.
But in my book, In Soil Not All, my last chapter is about how the discourse on energy got shrunk. Like I said, modernity, which only means existing in the today, that's modern, became imported, became modern, and your own became primitive, and that's colonialism. In a similar way, energy became extractive energy, and renewable energy to true renewability. That you can work. You know, one of the things I promote is this body is designed to work. I'm doing a book on the yoga of farming. This body is a working body. We don't work and then Mr. Johnson buys a bicycle, you know? No, this is a bit ridiculous. You eat junk food and become obese. And you don't in your everyday life work. We are a renewable energy. Food is a renewable energy. But there is no energy more renewable than the photosynthesis in a plant. No solar panel can beat it. No wind can beat it. And that miracle of photosynthesis is what gives us food, what gives us fiber, what gives us bamboo and building material. And it's just that we shouldn't treat it linearly. We shouldn't treat it with extractive mentality. We should treat it with love and understand its multifunctionality and conserve. And what I've learned in these 50 years is conservation and economy are not opposite things. True economy grows from conservation. Violence, which is war, destroys nature. And it should be called war. It should not be called economy. It's not worthy of the name economy, which means taking care of oikos, your home.
We have one question, which is from architect again, J. Venkatesh. How to convince growing children about vegetarianism and importance of it?
Well, you know, I learned from my parents because they never said no to me. Yeah? They lived lives. And I remember when my little boy was a little young and I said, don't do that. And my dad said, never say no. Just be the example. And the same to you. You don't have to convince anybody except through your life. And if your life is authentic, the conviction will spread. Not through preaching, not through coercion, but through example.
This is a question from Mr. Girish, HR Girish. Man has always been consuming from earth and has never ever contributed anything for the benefit of earth. People are arrogant and indifferent. How do we make 7 billion people reduce consumption and reduce their humongous population, as earth is now not able to bear their exploits and numbers?
Well, two things. One is, all those farmer refugees who became migrant laborers who went back after the lockdown. Did you see how much they have on their head? All their belongings were a bundle that big. They're not consumers. They're not consumers. Don't count their numbers and count them as the burden on the earth. Consume means to destroy. That's the word. It used to be the word for TV in the Middle Ages. So we have to deconsume. We have to decolonize our life. And my blog on simplicity, on the Simplicity Revolution, which is on the website, tells you exactly how you do it. But part of it is, therefore, not just how much you consume, but what you consume. I can eat the same roti, but a roti grown chemically with synthetic fertilizer sprayed with Roundup has caused harm in a different way. And I am part of the harm when I eat it. Therefore, if you have to make a shift from being a burden on the earth to being a carer for the earth, you have to shift to ecological living. You said we've always taken. Yes, everything we take, but there is one thing we can give back to the earth. Our seva. And organic farming to me is the seva to the earth. What do we do in organic? She gives us a lot of organic matter, lots of leaves, lots of straw, and we take a bit of it, might compost it or might give it back straight. That law of return is our dharma. That is the seva. That is available for us. And if we continue to do that, then we can be farmers of 40,000 years as we have been. And we don't have to destroy the earth. So all we can give is our effort, our love, our gratitude. And that has to be done physically, yeah? And that is organic farming.
I think that's so beautiful, actually, the law of return. Yeah. We have one Mr. Danish. I do not understand it. Indoor and outdoor plants we use to make microclimate. I think he means plants. I think we will skip the question, I suppose. Okay. I think there seem to be some question related to sustainable living and sustainable architecture and skills required for sustainable, living, something like that.
Let me just say one thing on this because you're so related to bamboo.
Yeah, ma'am.
Gandhi and Nehru had this big debate on housing.
Yeah.
And Gandhi, as you know, lived in a mud hut. Yeah?
Yeah.
But all of the people who talk modernity talk about mud huts being low level.
Yeah.
When the earthquake happened in Uttarkashi, must be 91, and it was actually a dam that had induced the earthquake, Agora. The only people who died, ones in cement houses. The people in the tiled huts with mud, it didn't kill them. The same happens for flooding. The same happens like that. We think cement is strong, but it has no flexibility. And therefore, the tragedy is amplified. And we must learn from nature the gift of resilience and adaptation. And that's where I feel architecture has to learn what agriculture, or at least the ecological agriculture I practice has done.
I think that's what actually, ma'am, we are trying to do through the simple school of simple living. We are trying to make it, and that's why I think there are a lot of questions from architects asking about the relation between, what you're talking about, the soil and the biodiversity and the agriculture as to how architecture, because architecture is also one of the very destructive activities, and it really pollutes the earth a lot. And we also take a lot of resources from the earth to make these big buildings and glass buildings and things like that. There are a lot of questions which is about that as well.
And that's a dialogue you can continue to have in your community. Yes.
Yes.
And we should be wrapping up now. Yeah.
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah, just very few more questions. That's, I think we'll just climate resilience and what to do when local communities are causing more environmental damage than benefit. Where do we find heirloom seeds? I mean, that I think you've already answered.
I already answered that. Write to us, write to navdanya@gmail.com.
Yeah.
You'll have to take a pledge because everyone who associates with this movement has to become a seed saver.
Yeah.
And then you'll get the heirloom seeds. Like I said, it's not a supermarket product. It's a legacy you care for.
Ma'am, due to this lockdown, the pollution level has decreased. That had an impact on season. So my question is, how it will affect our crop rotation? Is it going to have any effect?
No, I think it's just because some pollution came down for a short while. It's right back. I know, because our place was just full of birds, and the birds have gone again because the traffic has come back. Yeah. So, so much of the quiet for other species that was achieved by the lockdown is going away again. But this will not have, the big pattern shifts. There the shift is coming from a pollution of the atmosphere through greenhouse gases. And that's what's called climate change. I call it climate chaos because climate change makes people think, oh, gently, the temperature will go up. And then you have stupid skeptics who talk about, oh, now we'll be able to grow wine and grape in England, and we'll be able to swim in Scandinavia. No. Climate havoc means what could be a snowstorm in a hot area, or could be a heat wave like as it's hit Serbia. Europe is 40 degrees. Yeah. Right now, a skiing town is emptying out in the Alps in Italy because an entire glacier has melted, and it might just carry that village with it today, now. So, people skied because snows in the Alps were supposed to stay frozen. This is climate chaos. And climate chaos comes from rupture of systems. The word ritu, which is season, comes from the word rita, which is the right action. And we have violated rita, so we've got a mess of the ritu. Until we correct the action and live the right way, we won't be able to correct climate change. That's why the planet for humans, what it's touching, and people didn't get it, what it's really trying to touch is what we are up against is ecology as an ethical issue, not an engineering issue. And when we get the ethics right, the engineering will fall in place.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, ma'am. Thank you so much actually for such a, I think everyone is overwhelmed, and we could actually hear you 24 hours and we still will be wanting more. I would request you to just give one, message to the people. People are really very depressed, and they are really seeing because of this pandemic, and everyone is trying to probably look for a way out. So how do we move forward in the new normal? What should be a new normal like?
So the first thing is, I think we have to realize we are also self-organized beings. We are interconnected with other beings. We have a responsibility to other beings, and we have freedom. So in the new normal, we should take our human potential to the highest level. We should see that the pandemic crisis, the climate crisis, the extinction crisis, the urban crisis, the rural crisis are all interlinked. And the alternatives are also interlinked. When we make farming an activity of dignity and stop the exploitation, people won't leave villages. Towns won't explode. Slums and concrete skyscrapers won't explode either. So it's about bringing the balance back. And the balance back, to remember, that we are part of the Earth community, and that's why I talk of democracy. And I hope some of you will join us for the learnings we offer at the Earth University at the Beat Vidyapeeth. And let's continue the way. For those who get overwhelmed by the size of the problems, remember the seed is small. And that's where the change begins.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this inspiring talk. And you know, we all from all the participants from the Dayalbagh Educational Institute, which is also based on a very value-based education. And they have been running, actually, ma'am, there is a 8,000-acre estate in Rajabarari in Madhya Pradesh, where they have been also running a lot of agriculture. You know, they are working with the tribal communities and trying to work with them, educate them, and learn from them, of course, and you know, try to move forward. So this is something which is also Dayalbagh University is trying to do across the country, and we will be, you know, we're very happy to associate with the organization in very active manner in the future. We'll be very happy to do so. And then
thank you, Neelam. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye to all of you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ali.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very
I know
much
it was like a little overwhelming with ma'am there, but I think you did present your work pretty well from the Dayalbagh University. And stay tuned with us. We are going to have a second part of our series, you know, which is on Earth, and that we'll be starting with. Since there were a lot of questions from architects, so especially to them, I would like to tell that we are starting with our natural building materials and technologies. That's the next series that we have, and we'll be bringing you webinars on mud, bamboo, stone, and all these materials and technologies which are very close to Mother Nature, and which are traditional and which are very less harming. And I think most of your questions will be answered in those webinars in the coming month. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us. Have a very good evening ahead.